This is Evelyn Brooks, and tonight I'm playing something I was never supposed to find. In 1979, a man named Vincent Oleander worked as the night operator at a remote weather station in northern Alaska, Station 47. For 11 months, he sent daily reports: temperature, wind speed, barometric pressure. Nothing unusual. And then, on December 3rd, his transmissions stopped. When the relief team arrived 3 weeks later, they found the station empty. No body, no blood, no sign of struggle. Just his logbook. And inside it, pressed between the pages like a dried flower, was a single photograph of a woman no one could identify. Vincent wasn't supposed to be alone up there. His partner, a geologist named Morris Kettering, had left 2 weeks early claiming family emergency. But here's what they didn't tell the newspapers. Morris never made it home. His truck was found abandoned 17 miles south of the station, engine still running, driver's door wide open. On the passenger seat was a handwritten note that said only this: "She's not what she says she is." I spent 6 months tracking down Vincent's sister, a woman named Caroline, who lives in Portland now. She didn't want to talk at first, kept hanging up every time I called, sent back my letters unopened. But when I finally showed up at her door and mentioned the photograph, her face changed. All the color drained out of it. She asked me to describe it. I told her what I'd seen in the archived evidence files: a woman in her 30s, dark hair, standing in front of Station 47 in summer clothes, even though the station logs showed it was February when the photo was supposedly taken. The woman was smiling, but her eyes weren't. They looked past the camera like she was watching something behind whoever was taking the picture. Caroline went quiet for a long time. Then she invited me inside, made coffee with shaking hands, and she said something I'll never forget. She told me Vincent had a daughter who died when she was 7 years old, drowned in a lake near their family cabin in 1967. The girl's name was Isabel, and the woman in the photograph, Caroline said, looked exactly like Isabel would have looked if she'd grown up. The same dark hair, the same sharp chin, even the same way of standing with her weight on her left foot, because Isabel had broken her right ankle when she was 5, and it never quite healed right. But that's not the strangest part. 3 days before Vincent disappeared, he sent an unauthorized radio transmission to the main Weather Service headquarters in Anchorage. The operator who received it, a man named Gerald Fisk, logged it as, quote, "incoherent rambling," and filed it away. But Gerald kept a personal copy of that recording. And last year, before he died of lung cancer, he sent it to his daughter with instructions to find me. She contacted me through my website, said her father had been obsessed with this recording for 24 years, and made her promise to get it to someone who would listen. I listened to it 47 times. I can recite every word. Vincent's voice on that tape sounds nothing like the confident reports he'd been sending for 11 months. He sounds terrified. His words tumble over each other. He says he's been seeing someone walking around the perimeter of the station at night. Always the same time, 3:17 in the morning. He says he tried to follow her once, but she disappeared into an area where his footprints in the snow were the only ones visible. He says she knocks on the window of his quarters. 3 knocks. Always 3. Slow and rhythmic. And when he looks, she's standing there smiling at him. But her smile, he says, doesn't move right. Like someone who learned how to smile from watching, but never understood why people do it. Then Vincent says something that made my blood stop. He says, "I know it's impossible, but I swear to God it's Isabel. She looks exactly like her mother looked at that age. She's wearing the blue dress we buried her in. And yesterday morning, I found wet footprints leading from the lake to my door. But there is no lake here. The nearest water is 14 miles away. I checked the maps 6 times. There's no water anywhere near this station. But the footprints are there. Small, child-sized at first. Then they get bigger, like she's growing as she walks. And they're wet, not from snow, from something else, something that smells like algae and rot." The recording cuts off abruptly, but in those last 2 seconds before the static takes over, you can hear it. 3 knocks, slow and deliberate, and Vincent whispering, "She wants me to let her in. She's been knocking every night for a week, and I don't know how much longer I can say no." Gerald Fisk noted in his personal log that he tried to radio station 47 immediately after receiving this transmission. No response. He tried for 3 days straight. Nothing. When he finally reported it to his supervisor, they told him Vincent had already sent his regular morning report that same day, and everything was normal. Temperature readings, wind patterns, barometric pressure, all standard. But Gerald checked the timestamps. The distress call came in at 4:33 a.m. The normal report was logged at 6:15 a.m. Someone sent that second transmission. But it wasn't Vincent. Gerald became obsessed with this, started his own investigation, requested access to previous Station 47 records, and he found something nobody had noticed before. In 1965, 14 years before Vincent's disappearance, Station 47 had another operator go missing. A woman named Ruth Hendricks. She'd been there for 8 months when she stopped sending reports. The relief team found her station empty. No signs of struggle, but her diary was left open on the desk. The last entry was dated March 19, 1965. It said, "I keep dreaming about my son. He drowned when he was 9. But in the dreams he's grown. He's a man now, and he's standing outside in the snow asking me to let him in. Tonight, I think I will." Ruth's body was never found. But 6 months after her disappearance, a hiker found her coat 14 miles from the station. It was folded neatly on a rock beside a small frozen pond that wasn't on any maps. Inside the coat pocket was a child's drawing, a stick figure boy holding hands with a stick figure woman. Underneath, in a child's handwriting, "Together again." Gerald tried to get the authorities to reopen the case. They refused, said it was too old, and there wasn't enough evidence, so Gerald kept digging on his own. He found 7 other cases, 7 other remote station operators across Alaska who'd disappeared without a trace between 1952 and 1979, and every single one of them had lost a child, drowning, car accident, illness, fire, different causes, but the same result: dead children, grieving parents sent to isolated stations to heal or to hide, or maybe both, and every single one of them left behind the same clue: a photograph or a diary entry or a letter describing someone they recognized, someone who shouldn't be there, someone who looked like their lost child grown up. I need you to understand something. I don't believe in ghosts. I've spent 23 years collecting stories, and I've learned that most mysteries have disappointingly ordinary explanations. People get lost in the wilderness. They have breakdowns. They run away to start over. The human mind plays tricks, especially in isolation, especially when you're carrying guilt that heavy. But this one won't let me go, because there's one more piece to this that nobody can explain. When the relief team searched Station 47, they found Vincent's logbook open on his desk. The last entry was dated December 3rd, but the handwriting changed halfway through. The first part is Vincent's neat block letters documenting the day's weather patterns. Wind from the northeast, temperature -22, clear skies. Then, abruptly, the writing becomes unfamiliar, flowing and feminine, and it says, "He finally opened the door. He didn't want to at first, but I told him I was cold, and he always was kind to me when I was small. He said, I'm not really his daughter. He said his daughter is dead. I told him that's true, but also I am very much here, and doesn't that matter more than what used to be true?" He cried. I didn't mean to make him cry. I just wanted to come inside where it's warm. It's been so cold for so long. 12 years is a long time to wait in the dark water, but now I'm here, and he's smiling at me the way he used to, and I think maybe we can stay here together. Just the 2 of us, the way it should have been. The entry ends there, but in the margin, in Vincent's handwriting, is one more line. "I'm sorry, Caroline. Tell Mom I'm so sorry, but I can't leave her alone again." Caroline told me that after Isabel drowned, Vincent blamed himself. He'd been the one watching her that day at the lake. He'd looked away for just a moment to help his son with a fishing rod. When he turned back, Isabel was gone. They found her 40 minutes later tangled in weeds at the bottom of the lake. Her eyes were open. Vincent never forgave himself. He stopped sleeping, started drinking. His marriage fell apart within a year. By 1977, his ex-wife wouldn't let him see his remaining children. She said he was unstable, said the way he talked about Isabel like she was still alive scared the other kids. That's when he applied for the Station 47 position. Caroline said he told her he needed to be somewhere he couldn't hurt anyone else, somewhere he could disappear without anyone noticing. Now here's what keeps me awake at night. Last month I drove to the lake where Isabel drowned. It's been abandoned for decades. The old cabin is still there, but it's rotting, and the local kids say it's cursed, so nobody goes near it. I walked down to the water's edge. It was late afternoon, and the light was fading fast. The lake was perfectly still, not a ripple. And I saw something that made my hands shake so badly I almost dropped my recorder. There were footprints in the mud, small, child-sized, leading from the water to the tree line. The prints were fresh. I could see the individual toe marks, and next to them, partially obscured by fallen leaves, were larger footprints. Adult, male, boot prints, size 11. The same size Vincent wore according to his service records. The two sets of footprints walked side by side into the woods. I followed them for maybe 200 yards. Then, they just stopped. In the middle of a clearing, both sets of footprints ended, as if whoever made them simply ceased to exist. No disturbance in the leaves. No signs they'd turned around or climbed a tree or done anything except vanish. I stood there as the sun went down and the temperature dropped, and I swear I heard something. Laughter. A child laughing. High and clear and joyful. And a man's voice, soft and relieved, saying, "I've got you. I won't let go this time, I promise." I ran back to my car, and I didn't stop running until I was back on the highway. My recorder captured the whole thing. I've listened to it 30 times. The laughter is there, the voice is there, and underneath it all is another sound. Water, moving water, even though the lake was completely still and there were no streams nearby. The official report says Vincent Oleander suffered a psychological breakdown due to isolation and either wandered off into the wilderness or took his own life. His body was never recovered. Station 47 was permanently closed in 1981. The building still stands, but it's been stripped of all equipment. Locals won't go near it. They say if you stand outside at 3:17 in the morning, you can hear knocking from inside. 3 knocks. Always 3. And if you knock back, the sound stops. But then you start seeing things. A figure in your peripheral vision. Wet footprints in your house. The smell of lake water in rooms that have been dry for years. But there's something else they don't tell tourists who ask about the abandoned weather station. Every year, on December 3rd, someone reports seeing smoke rising from Station 47's chimney. Not just one person. Multiple witnesses, hikers, park rangers, bush pilots flying overhead. They all see the same thing. Gray smoke rising steadily from the chimney like someone's keeping a fire going inside. The park rangers check it every single time. They always find the building dark and locked and empty. No signs of fire. No warmth in the stove. No footprints in the snow around the building. Nothing. Except once. In 2003, a ranger named Thomas Way was doing the annual check. He found the door unlocked. That had never happened before. Security protocols required multiple locks, and the only keys were kept at the ranger station 70 miles away. But the door was standing open like someone had just stepped outside for a moment. Thomas went inside with his flashlight and his radio, and he saw something on the table that wasn't there the day before. A photograph. The same photograph that was found in Vincent's logbook. The woman in summer clothes standing in front of the station. But this time, there was someone else in the picture. Standing next to the woman, holding her hand, was Vincent Oleander. He was smiling, and according to Thomas, he looked happier than any person Thomas had ever seen. The woman was looking at Vincent, and her smile looked real this time. Not practiced, not wrong. Real. Thomas took the photograph to his supervisor. They logged it as evidence and locked it in a storage facility in Fairbanks. I requested access to see it myself. They approved my request, but when the evidence clerk went to retrieve it, the photograph was gone. The evidence bag was still sealed. The chain of custody was unbroken, but inside the bag, there was nothing except a small puddle of water that smelled like lake weed and decay. They tested the water, found traces of algae consistent with freshwater lakes in the interior, but the water also contained something else, human DNA. Two distinct profiles. One matched Vincent Oleander from samples on file. The other was too degraded to identify, but it was female, and showed markers consistent with a genetic relationship to Vincent, his daughter, or something wearing his daughter's DNA. I tried to interview Thomas Way, but his family told me he resigned from the Park Service in 2004 and moved to Arizona. They wouldn't give me his contact information, but his brother, after I bought him 3 drinks at a bar in Tucson, told me something Thomas had said right before he quit. Thomas had gone back to Station 47 one more time. Alone. Middle of the night. He wanted to see if the stories about the knocking were true. At exactly 3:17 a.m. he heard it. 3 knocks on the door. Slow and deliberate. He didn't open it, but he looked through the window. And standing outside in the snow, barely visible in the moonlight, were 2 figures. A woman in a blue dress, and a man in a weather service uniform. They were holding hands, and they were staring directly at him. Thomas said the woman smiled at him. That same wrong smile Vincent had described, like someone who learned the motion, but not the meaning. And then she raised her free hand and knocked on the window 3 times. The man, Vincent, looked at Thomas with an expression that Thomas said he couldn't quite read. It wasn't fear. It wasn't a plea for help. It was something else, something that made Thomas understand that Vincent didn't want to be rescued, that wherever he was, whatever he'd become, he'd chosen it. The brother told me Thomas never talked about it again. But sometimes, late at night, when he'd had too much to drink, he'd stare out the window at nothing and whisper, "He chose to stay with her. He actually chose it." And the worst part is, I think I understand why. I don't know what to believe anymore. Part of me thinks Vincent had a complete mental breakdown and wandered into the wilderness and died of exposure, and everything else is just coincidence and imagination and the human need to make patterns out of chaos. Part of me thinks something else, something I don't have words for, something that exists in the spaces between the living and the dead, feeding on grief and guilt and love that has nowhere else to go. Because I went back to Portland 3 weeks ago to see Caroline one more time. I wanted to tell her about the footprints by the lake, about the photograph, about everything Gerald Fisk had discovered. I thought she deserved to know her brother's story wasn't unique, that maybe it would help somehow. But when I got to her house, her daughter met me at the door. She said Caroline had passed away 2 months earlier, heart attack, peaceful in her sleep. The daughter was polite but distant, said her mother had never really recovered from losing Vincent, that she'd spent the last years of her life convinced he was still alive somewhere, happy, and that one day he'd come back to explain everything. The daughter invited me in for coffee. While we were talking, I noticed a photograph on the mantel. New. The frame still had the price sticker on the back. I asked about it. The daughter's face went strange. She said it had arrived in the mail the day after Caroline died. No return address, no note, just a postcard with an Alaska postmark. She showed it to me. It was a photograph of Station 47 in winter, the building covered in snow, smoke rising from the chimney. And in the window, barely visible but definitely there, were 2 figures, a man and a young woman. They were looking out at whoever took the photograph, and they were both smiling. On the back of the postcard, in handwriting that matched the feminine script from Vincent's logbook, was a single sentence. "Tell Caroline he's happy now. We both are. We're finally together." The daughter asked me what it meant. I told her I didn't know. But that was a lie. I knew exactly what it meant. And I think you do too. I think Vincent found what he'd been looking for all those years. Not forgiveness, not peace, but a second chance. A chance to be the father he failed to be, even if it meant following his daughter into whatever dark place she'd been waiting in, even if it meant leaving the world of the living behind. And I think Isabel, or whatever Isabel became after 12 years in that cold water, finally got what she wanted too. Her father back, her family whole again. Even if it meant pulling him down into her world to do it. Even if it meant becoming something that could reach across the boundary between life and death and knock on doors and smile with a mouth that didn't quite remember how. There's a question I keep asking myself. If you lost someone you loved, if you blamed yourself for their death every single day for 12 years, and if one night they came back and stood outside your door and asked you to let them in, knowing that opening that door meant you could never come back, would you do it? Would you choose love over life? Would you walk into the dark, holding the hand of something that used to be your child? I think Vincent Oleander answered that question. And I think his answer was yes. This is Evelyn Brooks. And I don't know if what I've told you tonight is a ghost story or a love story or both. But I know this. Station 47 still stands in the Alaska wilderness. The door is never locked. And if you go there on December 3rd at 3:17 in the morning, you might hear 3 knocks from inside. And if you're brave enough or foolish enough to knock back, you might hear something else. A man's voice, gentle and content, saying, "We're not receiving visitors right now, but thank you for checking on us. We're doing just fine. I haven't been back to Station 47, and I don't think I ever will. Some doors, once opened, can never be closed again, and some mysteries are better left unsolved. But every December 3rd, at exactly 3:17 in the morning, I wake up, and I listen, and sometimes I swear I can hear it. 3 knocks, soft and patient, coming from somewhere far away. And I wonder if Isabel is still looking for people to let inside, if she's still walking the boundaries between the living and the dead, knocking on doors, asking to be welcomed into the warmth, or if she's found what she was searching for, and if Vincent, wherever he is now, has finally forgiven himself. I hope he has. I really do. This is Evelyn Brooks, signing off. Sleep well. And if you hear knocking tonight, maybe just turn on all the lights and wait for morning. Some invitations aren't meant to be accepted.